Hi, my name is Rachel. I will start out by defining my Unit 4 terms. So the first term I chose was verbal and nonverbal communication. I chose nonverbal communication because I don't think we talk about this enough. We speak more with our nonverbal communication when we communicate with people more so than verbal and our actual words. So this really interests me. Our nonverbals are our body language, such as eye contact, facial expression, posture and gestures, and the tone of voice that we use when talking to someone. Verbal communication would be the words and language we use when talking to someone, such as when we empathize for someone, when we talk rationally to someone, the actions we take when talking to someone. The second term I chose for Unit 4 is emotions, and more so experiencing our emotions. Our emotions are a combination of psychological responses to the body and cognitive interpretation of the event. And this is a combination, like I said, of the two. That is our emotions. And that I chose this because I think we need to talk about our emotions more to have better relationships with people. My Unit 5 terms are, my first one is the four major sources of conflict. So the four major sources of conflict are one, differentiating goals, two, different ways of achieving goals. The third one is different interpersonal needs, and the fourth one is different behavioral expectations. I chose this because I think everyone deals with conflict, and we all can learn how to deal with conflict better. The fourth term I chose for Unit 5 is marriage. Marriage is when defined in our book as when you freely give yourself to another person and you don't give yourself to anyone else, and we look at it as giving yourself as a gift to someone freely. I find this very interesting because marriage is really looked at very differently by different cultures, religions. There can be marriages set up by people, so marriage can just be looked at so differently, and that really fascinates me. The movie I chose was The Help. The Help takes place in the 1960s. I think this was a very hard but eye-opening movie to watch. I'm really glad I watched it. I chose it because I'd been meaning to watch it for a while, and I'm glad I finally did. So like I said, it takes place in the 60s, and it starts out by showing how the help interacts with white people at the time, how African Americans and white people interact, and kind of how this girl Skeeter wants to evolve and move on from the discrimination. She goes off to college and is getting an education, which is very abnormal for women to do in that day and age. And she wants to write a book about black women and how they're treated and all the lengths they have to go to for white people when they're treated so badly by them. This is illegal at the time to do in the state of Mississippi, so this causes a big uproar, and a lot of changes are made in these women's lives, and changes for the better. So, for the first term, I'm really glad I chose nonverbal communication. After watching this movie, it really shows how much nonverbal communication is the true form of how we communicate with others. For example, the help is not able to verbally communicate how they feel to Hilly, because if they would, they'd be punished either verbally or even physically. There's cases of black people standing up to the white people, and they are in some cases even killed. So a lot of times Miss Hilly will say something nicely in a bad tone, and the help will just have to reply with yes ma'am instead of telling her how they really feel. This also ties in with emotions. Our emotion, they express their emotions. They aren't able to very much in this era. I think that, for example, when Skeeter finally does express her emotions, she is looked at badly, and it's not accepted. I think that people need to express their emotions more, and it will help more with their relationships, which is how that relates to me. For the other term I did with conflict, I think that between Skeeter and Hilly, they may seem like friends, but there's a lot of conflict in that relationship because they have very different goals. Skeeter's goal in life was to get an education and get a job, while in that day and age, as Hilly will tell her numerous times, she should be more focused on getting a husband, getting married, and having children, but Skeeter doesn't agree with that, and they have a lot of conflict. And I think that I myself would have a lot of conflict with people because I don't have the same goals, and not everyone shares the same goals, which is why I chose this topic. For my fourth term with marriage, I think that this is shown a lot throughout the film, that marriage is looked at very differently by different people. To people like Hilly, it's looked at as everything. That's the first thing that they need to accomplish, and it's not looked at as equal, and not giving yourself to someone because you love them. Skeeter looks at this marriage as a more modern way of looking at things, and there's no need to rush to marry someone. I'm really happy I watched the movie The Help. I think that it was a very eye-opening movie, and I'm glad I watched it.